Hello everyone, you read the title, you know what's up, but before I get into the teams, let's go over some rules. First of all, I will be rating all teams solely based on top level competitive viability. There's nothing wrong with building goofy teams, meme teams, theme teams, but you won't get any points for it here. Secondly, I will be ranking all teams on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 to 2 means a near guaranteed loss at a top level, 2 to 4 is a likely loss at a top level, 5 to 6 is decent but has considerable weaknesses, 7 to 8 is strong but still has noticeable weaknesses, and 9 to 10 is very solid with very few weaknesses. Lastly, I will not change the key Pokemon or goal of a team when fixing it. Even if that key Pokemon or strategy is unviable or outclassed, I will stick with the vision of the team. All teams I show in this video will be linked in the description, both the original submissions and my edited version. Let's get right into it. First up, we have a Talonflame Balance by Naxduck. So looking here, we've got a CB Talonflame, a fairly standard Assault Vest Hatterene, another they're fairly typical Alomomola, but we do have a unique Healing Wish here, which is not common, so we've got Healing Wish. Just a Curse, Terra Water, Garg, Great Tusk, standard 4 attacks, boots, and an AV Raging Bolt with Terra Blast Fairy. So first, let's go over some of the weaknesses. Naxduck themselves actually put in some of the weaknesses for this team. They said Sinistcha was a problem, which kind of, but not really. Honestly, you can deal with that. Talonflame one-shots it. Raging Bolt puts on a lot of pressure, and Hatterene can block Strength Sap, so I'm not really sure what that was, what that problem was about. Dragapult was noted as well, but I honestly have no idea what Naxduck was talking about there either. You've got an AV Hatterene and a Garg. That should be good. Wake was noted as a threat as well, which confuses me even more. I mean, you've got two really solid water resists, an AV Bolt and AV Hatterene for Draco. I don't see how Wake is a problem. But I did test this team on my own, and I found some problems that I thought were a lot more of a big deal. So one is SD Gliscor. Basically, that's game over. There's nothing here that can really take on an SD Gliscor. Nothing really has the power to do so. CB Talonflame is not doing nearly enough damage. The next thing, Zamazenta, I noted as well. Not a huge problem, but Hatterene is kind of your only line of defense there. So if Hatterene gets chipped heavily, or even if the Zamazenta turns out to be like sub, Terra Fire, Terra Steel, or has Heavy Slam, it's very problematic. Hazards were another thing. So you do have Tusk and you do have Hatterene, but the problem is this Tusk set. I really cannot express how much I hate this Tusk set. This Tusk cannot even outspeed Gambit. Look at that, 210. You are not even outspeeding King Gambit. So this Tusk is so slow that any Air Balloon Gholdengo, any Pecharunt, any Ghost type is outspeeding you, which makes it pretty hard to remove hazards. And Hatterene, it's great, but it's not doing all the work yourself. You need a speedier Tusk if you're going to rely on Hatterene Tusk for a Pokemon so weak to hazards as Talonflame. Next thing I wanted to note is Stall. Let's just go through this team. Is this ever breaking Stall? No, this is getting hard-walled by Pex, Olo, and a million other things. Olo is, of course, never breaking Stall. Garg, not even close. Tusk, of course not. Tusk is never going to break a Stall team. AV Bolt, no, gets hard-walled by Blissey and Claude. So basically, your entire plan against Stall, and you have no hazards. You don't even have Stealth Rock on any of these Pokemon, so you're not going to wear them down that way. Your only way of breaking Stall at the moment is an AV Hatterene. That's not going to work. I mean, this is going to just get Seismic tossed down by Blissey. Maybe if you play like a god and your opponent really messes up and Blissey gets paralyzed a ton and you get off a ton of psychic noises, maybe. But realistically, you're never beating any Stall team with this. The next thing, just breaking power in general. I mean, you've got a CB Talonflame, but let's be so for real. I mean, this Pokemon has 81 attack, and to get this really nice speed tier where you're outpacing Darkrai, you need to be Jolly. So this is actually not that strong of a Pokemon, even with these super high base power moves. And Raging Bolt is the second strongest thing, but without specs or anything, the team is not incredibly powerful. As I said before, I also hate the Tusk set. I thought that should be noted. It's just really awful. This is never removing anything, and I have no idea what's going on here, generally. And of course, the last thing, I was so confused as to why this Garg isn't SPDF. Fizz Def Curse is just not very good here, and especially defensive is a lot better with Terra Water. Helps against Gholdengo too, which is a huge issue to this team given Tusk can't outspeed it. Yeah, that's pretty much the most part of the problems. There were some things I did like about the team. One, this Talonflame was surprisingly good. I mean, it was actually quite anti-meta. Like, the strong priority was really good. It could actually I ended up switching this out for dual wing beat, and it was actually able to like take out Araquanid and Rabombi leads. So it was actually pretty cool. I really did like using CB Bravebird. It was really helpful, helped out a lot in the end games, and its speed tier, of course, was incredible. So just clicking Banded U-turn was nice too. The pivot core of Talon, Olo, and Raging Bolt was really nice. I actually liked AV Bolt quite a bit. I was impressed with how it performed. It was fairly consistent, but still, overall, this team had a lot of weaknesses. I'd say my rating initially is a 5 out of 10. But let's fix this. Let's get into the changes. So first thing we're going to do is fix this Tusk. As I said, I hate this Tusk. I hate this Tusk set so much. So what we're going to do is make this thing fast. We're going to make it speedy. And then we're going to go with a fun little spread here. So 104 HP, 12 special defense, and the rest in attack. What this allows you to do is switch into any hit from a Raging Bolt, live, and kill back with a Headlong Rush. So that's the purpose of this, because Raging Bolt is not the end of the world for this team. I mean, AV Hat helps, but Raging Bolt is not a great matchup, so we definitely want to be outspeeding that. And this also just makes Tusk way better at removing. We're also going to get rid of Knockoff and add Rocks. We need hazards on this team. The next thing I wanted to do is get rid of Garg. I was testing, this whole team was kind of like, it put the pressure on the opponent, you know, you could pivot around, everything felt offensive, and then Garg would just come in and be this absolute drain of momentum. It would allow a Glow King to come in and chili out, it would allow something to come in and set hazards. It was just not nearly offensive enough. So what I wanted to switch it out for was actually a Wellspring. So not only does this give us another knock user, which we just, got rid of on Tusk, but Wellspring just helps keep the momentum going, because we're going to be running a U-turn set. So that's going to work well with Talonflame and Raging Bolt and Olo. We've got this kind of pivoting core going, which is really nice. It also just makes the team a lot less passive, helps with the Gliscor problem as well. Yeah, we were just before this team, it felt like it was just not strong enough for how frail it was, but now that Garg is gone, replaced with a Wellspring, it was a lot better. I personally prefer Adamant. You can go Jolly, but I'm greedy like that. Next thing I wanted to talk about Talonflame. Dual Wing Beat. I mean, look, Upper Hand is a cheesy move. Basically, it's here to cheese Kingambit that try to use Sucker Punch. It's a move that flinches, but if you actually attack on a priority move but fails otherwise, it's a terrible move, honestly. And Dual Wing Beat is really good on Talonflame. You sometimes want to kill a Pokemon with priority move that's already chipped, but you don't want to lose Gale Wings. So having Dual Wing Beat makes a lot of sense. It really is just better. Trust me on this. I get that it was probably fun to cheese some Kingambit, but its Dual Wing Beat is a million times better. Jolly is very nice on this, I will admit. Outspeeding Darkrai naturally is good. At the same time, if you go Adamant, 351, that's a really nice speed tier. So you're still outpacing Wellspring naturally and that kind of thing. So I'd consider Adamant. You do get some nice calcs with Adamant, especially with Dual Wing Beat, but both are valid. I'd say it's really a matter of personal preference. As far as Hatterene goes, so one thing you want to do, first we're going to make this minus attack, and then we're going to put on Terra Normal. So what this is going to do is hard shut down Sinistra. Think about this. You can Nuzzle, then you'll outspeed Sinistra, now that we're no longer a minus speed nature. Then you can Terra Normal and click Psychic Noise. So Machigacha won't be able to be clicked, and Shadow Ball you'll be immune to it. So this basically, we can really quickly fix that Sinistra problem just by kind of rearranging this Hatterene set just a little bit. Also makes you immune to Ghost, which is not bad, since I will admit, upon removing Garganacl, we did make the team weaker to Dragapult. That's definitely true. Alomomola. I wanted to get rid of Boots. We've now got a Speedy Tusk and a Hatterene. We don't really need Boots. We are counting on those Pokemon to keep hazards off the field, and I want this team to be able to get in our threatening Pokemon more. Eject Button Alo helps out a ton here. It can get in Talonflame. It can get in Wellspring. It can get in Bolt. Basically, this just helps kick off this momentum core you've got here of all these switching moves, and it does just a much better job of that. The next thing I wanted to do on this, Terra Ghost. This is going to allow you to PP stall Zamazenta out of crunches if you need to do that, which is very much a real thing that might end up happening. Now the problem is, if Zamazenta can sometimes catch you and hit you with enough crunches that you actually can't regen it off with Wish and such, so you might end up needing to go Protect over Healing Wish if Zama proves to be an issue, but I don't expect it will. I think that should be enough paired with Hatterene. And also you're missing 4 EVs, so let's just pop that into attack. Get a little bit of a stronger flip turn. Next, I wanted to talk about Raging Bolt. So something you may notice, I still haven't really addressed the stall matchup. Ogerpon helps out a little bit. Rocks help out a little bit if it's not a defog core of stall. But with Raging Bolt, we're going to make a change that is actually going to make stall tremble, and that is making Raging Bolt Terra Ice. This is actually a huge deal here because Terra Blast Ice gives you a 70% chance to two-shot Clodsire. Meaning, when you face a stall team, unless you happen to be very unlucky and face like a Terra Ground Blissey, you can start wearing Pokemon down with Volt Switch. Especially because you can already start to wear Special Walls down with Psychic Noise from Hatterene. Raging Bolt clicking Volt Switch on the Blissey and threatening a kill if the Clodsire comes in actually puts you in a place where you can beat stall. Now, it's not like this thing's going to break stall immediately. You're going to have to Volt Switch on a Blissey like 10 times, but that's okay. You've got an Alo, you've got removal, you've got hazards. You can play the long game. It's not like you're in a pressure like you need to end the game fast. You have hazard control, really abundant hazard control, and you have Wish Passers to keep the full team healthy. Now, after all these changes, I would give this team an 8 out of 10. Honestly, maybe even an 8.5 or 9 out of 10. This team worked super well. It was consistently winning in high 1900s. I'm actually around, I think, like rank 3 or 4 on the ladder right now, and I partly used this team to get up there. It has been surprisingly, shockingly consistent. I will say the new team is weaker to Dragapult, but it's not that bad of a matchup since you've got double Assault Vests. You've got double AVs, and you have Eject Button on this. So it's not a terrible matchup. You can also throw Terra Normal on Tusk to kind of shock Dragapult, give you a little nice little immunity there to Shadow Ball if you want. But yeah, it was really consistent. This team was great. Now, I know these changes seem fast and obvious when I'm explaining them, but a lot of time and effort goes into adjusting these teams, trying them out on ladder, adjusting them, testing more. Even changes that seem theoretically good in the builder sometimes don't work out on ladder, and other times things that look problematic in the builder turn out to be quite manageable. So I spent at least 3 hours testing and adjusting per team to make these videos, so if you're enjoying, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. It really helps out a lot and lets me know that you guys are enjoying these videos so I can continue to make them. Now, on to Team 2. Here we have a Fire, Grass, Water bulky offense by Firstly Me. Let's take a look. So we start off with a relatively standard AV Primarina, a Scarf Meowscarada, a specially defensive Heatran. Definitely don't see too many Heatran nowadays, so that's cool. A standard Specs Pult. And here we have a very interesting Iron Valiant. CM Psyshock Moonblast, not too crazy, but then following up with Close Combat. So that's pretty interesting. Gives you a way to kill Kingambit. Definitely a unique set there. And then we just have a standard Removal Tusk for the last slot. So this team definitely does have some weaknesses. One that I noticed immediately was Roaring Moon. This team has no priority, and you may notice every single Pokemon is dying to Roaring Moon. You have one response. The other thing is Roaring Moon can come in. It can come in on Heatran and setup, and it can come in on Dragapult if it's locked into Flamethrower or Shadow Ball. Or, honestly, Meowscarada, right, if it's not locked into knockoff. So there are definitely ample setup opportunities for Moon, and the problem is your only answer is Triple Axle. So if the Roaring Moon is not Terra Flying, it's pretty much over. If it's Terra Fairy, if it's Terra Ghost, it can live. It can Terra, survive, and then now it's at +2, and the entire team gets swept. While testing this team, I lost a lot of games to Roaring Moon. Ogerpon Wellspring is also not great, being it can block Primarina's flip turn, and the team doesn't have an awesome switch in. It also just comes in pretty easily on Heatran and Tusk. It's not the end of the world, it's not the worst matchup, but it's a bit rough. Great Tusk was a little bit problematic too. Our only ground resist is Meowscarada, so Headlong Rush is kind of effective. It's not a huge issue, but Great Tusk is something to keep your eye on. Glowking was another thing I wanted to mention. It's pretty tough for Ival and Primarina, kind of just hard stops those Pokemon, and if it's Assault Vest, it can actually scout Dragapult very well, even if you click Shadow Ball. So Glowking was definitely a problem. Toxic Spikes, speaking of poison types, Toxic Spikes, Glimmora was a big issue. You may notice no grounded poison absorber here. Even with Boots Tusk to remove, a lot of teams that use Toxic Spikes have a spin blocker. So you're going to have to take that T-Spikes on Prim, Meowscarada, Dragapult, and Ival. So no grounded poison absorber and 4 Pokemon that are getting hit by T-Spikes. That's pretty rough. And that kind of applies to hazards in general, too. Not only are those Pokemon taking Toxic Spikes, you've got now 5 Pokemon without boots that are grounded that are taking full damage, with the exception of Ival, from Stealth Rock and from Spikes. So hazard stack in general was rough for this team. As I said, yes, you've got Tusk, but it's not really enough. Tusk is not alone going to be able to remove from these teams. These hazard stack teams are very much ready for Great Tusk, being it is the most common spinner in the tier. And the last issue I had was the lack of priority. Having nothing on this team that can use any priority made the HO matchup feel very volatile and difficult. Now, there were some things I liked about this team too. First of all, the stall matchup is surprisingly good. Psychic Noise Primarina is really nice for that. Note that this is Torrent, so this Psychic Noise can hit super effective Toxapex, which is really nice. You could put Trick on Meowscarada to make the stall MU even better, but we'll get to that later. I was actually really liked Heatran for the stall MU. I found it better than Magma Storm sets, which might sound crazy, but a lot of stalls do not run Heal Bell at any point nowadays, especially now that Clefable doesn't get it. So this Heatran, able to burn stuff, taunt stuff, is actually really, really good. And the other thing is it can get hazards up on Corviknight, since obviously Corviknight does not want to stay in on a Heatran, so you will get rocks up against stall, which is nice. This Ival set, actually shockingly good against stall teams too. It's pretty funny. I remember actually on ladder when testing this, I set up a Calm Mind, a Blissey came in and Terra Darked, and then got blown up by a CC. It was really, really funny. I also want to call out Heatran here as being really good. As I said, surprisingly good against stall and really nice against Sun teams and Iron Moth. So I was impressed with Heatran's performance. When I first saw it on the team, I thought, oh, this is going to be terrible, but I really like it, and I love that we're using Lava Plume and not Magma Storm. It makes it so much more consistent. I also loved the just defensive core. Honestly, it was really solid. As I said, it did have some weaknesses, but for the most part, other than a few sweepers and breakers, it was good in most situations, and it could take a few hits despite how offensive the team was. And that was another thing I liked. This team is not passive at all. If you look here, every single Pokemon can hit hard. There is nothing on this team that is letting the momentum die, that is too passive, that's letting the opponent do what they want. Everything is exerting pressure. And the last thing I liked, it was fast. This team is fast. Look at this. We got Booster Speed Ival, Scarf Meow, Spexpalt. Like, this is a really, really fast team. So although it doesn't have priority, it definitely is good on speed. I actually really was impressed with this team. Before the original ranking, I would give it an 8 out of 10. Performed super well on ladder. I actually hit rank 3 just using the original team without any edits, or at least with very, very minimal edits. But there are some things we want to change here. So the first thing is we'll go from left to right, because there are kind of tiny changes on every Pokemon. It's not like I did a major team overhaul. One thing I do want to do, Terra Poison. This is going to be really, really helpful against stall, and against certain hyper offense teams that are going to use Glimmora, or just random Glimmora teams, or even just random T-Spike teams. Having the option to turn into a grounded poison type is nice. And of course, it's just a generally good Terra type. Gets you out of the grass weakness and some other things Primarina doesn't like. You also could go HDB on Prim to help with the hazard issue, but I personally prefer AV by a little bit. On Meow, As I said, you could consider Trick over Triple Axel, or even over like Knockoff or something. I would say probably it's best to just keep this set as it is, but it would help against stall. Heatran, love the set. It's good. No criticism there. Dragapult was the biggest one. So I want to make this an HDB Pult. So this does a few things. One, it helps a lot against hazards. You know, the whole team is no longer getting fried by any time you see like T-Spikes or a Ting-Lu Sinistra team. So we can run Draco Hex. I mean, this is a fairly standard set. You can keep Terra Fairy, you could go Terra Dragon for the power. I would personally go with that, but it's not really a big deal either way. This boot set is just going to make your Dragapult a lot more flexible. You could also go a mixed set with darts. Always an option. But one of the big reasons I wanted to do this is it also gives fewer setup opportunities for Roaring Moon. If your Pult is locked in, because as I said, we talked about this earlier, Heatran, if Roaring Moon comes in on Heatran, it's a problem. If it comes in on Meowscarada locked into Knock, it's a problem. And if it comes into Dragapult clicking Shadow Ball or Flamethrower, it's a problem. Having 3 Pokemon that let in something that is probably going to end the game is not good. Having 2 is a lot more manageable. So the fact that Dragapult can switch up its moves and actually play against hyper offense teams without just being terrified of Roaring Moon coming in and setting up helps out a lot. The other thing is I just didn't love specs here. Its flexibility was not great. You click Draco, you maybe do a lot of damage or get a kill, sure, but then you've got this Pult that you need to switch out and a team that's really not that great at taking hits. So I think you'll find HDB a lot more consistent here. Iron Valiant, you could pretty much slap any Ival set here and it would work well. I originally thought this set was terrible, but honestly it performed really well in testing, so I'm not going to judge. I mean, keep going. As I said, you know, when you set up a Calm Mind, Gambit usually thinks they can live, and then you hit them with a close combat, or things Terra Dark, or, you know, like a Clodsire might Terra Steel. So this set was actually surprisingly good. You may want to consider going minus Spadef instead of minus attack, given you are running close combat, but as I said, not really a big deal. I actually liked this set quite a bit. Last thing we're going to do is change Great Tusk. So personally, I would go a different Terra type on this. I find generally I want a Terra to be more, defensive rather than offensive. So I would probably go something that helps against Ogerpon, like Terra Grass, Dragon, something like that. And then I wanted to change the EVs a little bit. The spread I was using on the other team. So 104, 12, and then 140 attack. Reason being, this team struggles with Raging Bolt. Less so now that we've got a different Dragapult set, but this team does not like switching in to Raging Bolt, so having a Pokemon that can guarantee take a Dragon Pulse helps out a lot. Now, after these changes, as I said, they were pretty minor, but they do help certain matchups. So after these fixes, I would give this team an 8.5 out of 10, maybe a 9 out of 10. I did try rearranging the team to add some priority, but I ended up having to make so many changes it was unrecognizable, and I'm not even sure it was better. But it's a really solid team even without priority. All right, let's move on to Team 3. Here we have Dragmag by RPG. So let's start. We got a Terra Fighting Specs Magnet Pull Zone, a CB Roaring Moon, Eject Button, fairly standard here, Healing Wish support Hatterene, a defensive Landorus, a really weird Glowking here with Nasty Plot, FS Sludge Bomb, and a Shuckaberry, and then a fairly standard DD Kyurem here, choosing to go with Terra Blast Electric. So let's start with the weaknesses, then we'll go over the strengths. The weaknesses are significant. This team loses to so many Pokemon, like so many Pokemon. This team just gets cooked by. Roaring Moon, nothing outspeeds it. If Lando gets chipped, it's basically over. Roaring Moon after 1 DD outspeeds everything, and there's no priority. Iron Moth, Fiery Dance. If the Fiery Dance boosts happen, it's over. There's nothing that can deal with that. Iron Valiant, if it sets up Calm Minds. If it gets past Glowking, it's pretty much over. Like a Shadow Ball Moonblast set is basically the end. Dragonite, once again, 1 DD, nothing outspeeds it. You noticing a pattern? Any speedy setup sweepers destroy this team. Dragapult, you have nothing that outspeeds it. Ogerpon Wellspring, generally pretty rough. Clicks Ivy Cudgel, kind of on the whole team. Ivy Cudgel plus Play Rough destroys, and you have only one Pokemon that's outspeeding Wellspring, which is a Roaring Moon. Hyper Offense in general. As you would imagine, given I just listed a bunch of common Hyper Offense Pokemon that destroy this team, you face an HO, it's pretty much over. Next, Hazards. Not really your fault on this one. It's pretty difficult. This team needs a lot of the slots it has to put on offensive pressure, but yeah, it doesn't deal particularly well with Hazards. Hatterene, just relying on Hatterene is a bit tough, and a lot of these Pokemon, Roaring Moon and Kyurem, are hating Hazards. This Glowking set is absurd. I think that deserves to be mentioned as a weakness to the team. I really didn't like it. Gliscor, super difficult as well. I mean, SD sets devastate this team. Goldengo is also really rough for this team. You have one Ghost Resist, so that's not ideal. And Gold is able to resist a lot of hits that this team can dish out and kill a bunch of stuff with Make It Rain and Shadow Ball. Kingambit is another Pokemon I wanted to mention. That's quite problematic. If it sets up an SD, I mean, you better hope your Magnezone and Lando are healthy, but like, think about this. If this thing gets up an SD, you are in a lot of trouble. And the next thing I wanted to mention is just the speed problem. I know I've gone over that again, but no priority, and the fastest Pokemon is Roaring Moon. So there are tons of setup sweepers I haven't mentioned that are going to destroy this team. Now, it's not all bad. There are some things this team does well. So if you face a Corviknight balance, you're destroying it. You will ruin it. You'll do amazing. It honestly ruins balance in general. Dealing with Magnezone, Spec Zone, a CB Moon, and a loaded dice DD Kyurem, that's pretty rough for any balance team. So you're probably going to destroy any balance, bulky, fat teams you see. And of course, nobody's really ready for Magnezone, so it could catch people off guard. That being said, this team has so many bad matchups. I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10 as my initial rating. It was really, really bad against most offensive teams, which is the meta right now. I think this is the lowest rank I've ever given to a team that's structurally well built and thought out, but it's just not good into all of the Pokemon and archetypes that are good right now. Essentially, if your opponent has a competent offensive team, you're going to lose. So let's fix this. First of all, Magnezone. For the stall matchup, as I said, you're going to defeat a lot of balance and bulkier teams, but hard stall is still going to be an issue. You may want to consider Terra Water or Terra Ice. Kind of earlier how like I was talking about the Raging Bolt being able to pivot as a means of kind of breaking down stall slowly. That's an option you could do. So Terra Blast to just get yourself past Clodsire. Roaring Moon. We need Choice Scarf. You probably saw this coming based on all the things I was saying, but we need Choice Scarf. And I would personally go Terra Dragon on that so you can get a nice Scarf Terra Dragon Outrage, but this team has no speed at all. You really, really need this. Ground is valid as well. I personally prefer Dragon. But yeah, basically you've got a team with way too much power and way too little speed. You've got Spec Zone and Loaded Dice Kyurem. That's good enough on breaking. We need some speed. We need something that can handle Pult. We need something that can stop setup Iron Moth. This gets that job done. Hatterene, this set's fine. I mean, you could run a lot. You could try Psychic Noise. You could try Mystical Fire. Really doesn't matter. This Hatterene set's fine. Landorus, we need to change this. We need to go max speed taunt. This team hates hazards. You need to be able to prevent hazards to the best of your ability. So I would highly recommend making this set what it is. As for Earth Power, you could go Earth Power. I don't particularly think you need to here. You don't have a Rillaboom or anything. I would personally go a physical set. I guess it helps a little bit against Zamazenta, but I wouldn't say that was a huge threat to the team in the first place, but it really comes down to personal preference. Either way, it's not a big deal. But I would go minus attack. I don't think minus special defense is worth it there. Getting at 10% on lost on the U-turn, not that big of a deal. Slowking, let's go with this. This set is ridiculous. We're not going to run this. So as I said earlier, this team has a bit of a Gliscor problem. If you look at this team, this loses, especially now that we're Scarf Moon. Like everything is losing except for Kyurem. And Kyurem doesn't exactly love switching into Gliscor. It just loves 1v1 in Gliscor. So we're going to get rid of Nasty Plot, which I don't frankly think was ever going to work anyway, and replace it for Ice Beam. The next thing we're going to do is go with eject button. This team has no defensive backbone, so your really only way of winning is going to be switching around enough and continuously applying a lot of pressure to your opponent's team. So I want eject button to help that happen easier. Ground types are a problem. I understand why Shuca Berry was here, but I think dealing with ground types for the most part, you've got Landorus, you've got Hatterene, you have Kyurem. It's not going to be great, but I do think eject button is going to help out a lot in just making the team function better. After these changes, I would give this team a 5.5 out of 10. I really did my best while sticking with the vision of the team, but the truth is this team just still has a lot of issues. Fundamentally, you should not use Magnezone. It's always better to just pressure steel types and structure your team in a way that forces chip onto your opponent's steel types rather than try to trap and kill them with such a terrible Pokemon. It's got, poor speed, mediocre bulk, tons of common weaknesses. Overall, this is a liability on basically every team. Now, I know I said I don't change the key Pokemon or vision of the team, so this Magnezone build will be what I link in the description, but I did have a version that I tried without Magnezone that performed a lot better, and that was using Choice Band Scizor. So this gives the team some priority, so immediately our Hyper Offense matchup is so much better. So I went with a Terra Steel set, U-Turn, Bullet Punch, Knockoff, and wait for this last one, Defog, right? Throwing Defog on this helps a little bit with the hazard situation, which, as I said, pretty rough. So being able to Defog, a lot of people won't see that coming on Scizor, so it'll actually be pretty solid there. I wanted to run enough speed to outpace Kingambit, at least the Adamant max speed Kingambit, so we're going to hit 200. And then I just threw the rest into HP. So this Scizor was so good, so much better than Magnezone. And as I said, easier to put pressure on steels. Now that we don't have Magnezone, what next thing I did was switch this Kyurem. So I switched this Kyurem to a special set with Earth Power, Sub, Tect, Freeze Dry. This was really, really good. This did really, really well. As far as the set, I'm personally greedy. I like Modest. I can't remember the exact spread I put on this. I think I wanted to outspeed Raging Bolt or something like that. I'll put the exact EVs for whatever spread I ended up using in the description, but this worked really, really well. So with CB, Scizor over Zone, Moon still being Scarf, and this Kyurem doing really well against those fatter teams, you have just so much of a better matchup spread and a much more consistent team. I would honestly give this team an 8.5. Probably. I didn't test it a lot, but I think I'm at like top 3 on ladder right now with this version. This Scizor team has been performing incredibly on ladder. So as I said, the Magnezone version will be linked, but if the goal of your team was more so just the Dragon spam, then I'm confident that this Scizor version is a lot better. Magnezone is just sadly not worth using. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.